Grazie, io chiamerei per il saluto.
So I would like to call Mr. Di Mossi, the mayor of Siena, who is our kind host here at the Santa Maria della Scala, so that we can start our meeting afterwards. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for participating to this today's meeting organized by Qualivita, but also with the precious help by Prima. And we can just be very happy and proud, I would say, of this opportunity for our city of Siena, for our farmers, and because we believe that this is a chance that has been forgotten for too long in order to revive the importance, the economic value of our farming lands. Agriculture has a strong, healthy economy, and as we saw yesterday, all the speeches that we heard showed that our life depends on our lifestyle, but also on our eating style. That is conjugated absolutely with the choice of the products that we are eating, of what we are drinking. So it's a cultural choice. It's not just an eating choice, but truly a cultural choice. Our products are excellent. We don't need to say anything to this type of audience in this room today. Our excellent products must be enhanced and developed, because it's truly our duty to recognize quality and excellence, quality in general. And Tuscany has so many excellent productions that sometimes we forget about them. And in fact, in this city of Siena, as we said from the very beginning, it is important to bring back the wine and agri-food sector at the level that it deserves. World excellence. So this initiative here in the Santa Maria della Scala intends to have a specific meaning. Culture and art, even agri-food art, can be conjugated together perfectly. And if people believe that this is a commoditization of the artistic value of this particular venue, I'm telling you, you do not understand the beauty of the products that we have, the expression of a tradition, of a culture that enriches us all. This initiative is a kickoff meeting of the geographical indications, and the kickoff is very meaningful because it's the kickoff of a new season that must never end and will continue in the future. We are all together in our society, in our political office, but the value that we can express stays and will have to be passed on to the future generations. Today, we are going to have Gianmarco Centinaio, the minister, but also Paolo De Castro from the EU Parliament. And they have specific roles, and there is a specific reason why they're here. Because, both on an Italian and European level, they are really trying to develop our farmers, our businessmen, because this is the beginning of something that will make us stronger and healthier and more aware of where we are coming from and where we live. Thank you.
Grazie al sindaco di Siena.
So thank you very much to Mr. De Mossi, the mayor of Siena. And now I would like to call Mr. Cesare Mazzetti, who is the chairman of the Qualivita Foundation, and that will be followed by the first session. So good morning to everyone and welcome to the kickoff meeting. I would really like to thank Mr. De Mossi for being us and for his kind words. And also, we are very grateful that he offered us this beautiful location. This is an ancient hospital. And also, I would like to greet the representative of all the foreign delegations that accepted our invitation from France, from Portugal, from Norway, and from Spain. And also, I would like to greet the members of our of our foundation, and I would like to welcome you all. This is a kick-off meeting. It's a new meeting for Qualivita. You know that Qualivita is celebrating its 18th anniversary. It was established here in Florence, and for the last 18 years, it has been working hard in order to support the geographical indication system, not only in Italy, but all over the world. We cooperate with important stakeholders such as the Ministry of Agriculture, the ISMEA, the Treccani Encyclopedia, and we organize different events, but also we write reports about the geographical indications, but also we coordinate with authorities for traceability events. So we are really trying to promote activities that are useful for the geographical indication world. This is a kickoff meeting. It's sort of a new beginning for a consolidated, system. So first of all, we need to say that this system was established in 1992, and then it was consolidated later on, and a whole system was created so that all the stakeholders are familiar with it. They tried it, they experimented, and they got to know it very well, and they realized that what needs to be improved and what is okay. The world changed from the regulation 2081. You remember things changed, everything became so much faster. Today you receive information on your phone within seconds from something when something is happening. For instance, we became globalized. Halloween, that was an Anglo-Saxon or an English celebration, now is celebrated all over the world. And now there are so many TV cooking shows from all over the world, and we are very happy about it because the Italian cuisine became very appreciated through these TV shows all over the world, and it became very fashionable as well. And many changes from a social and economic level, markets becoming faster and faster, thus leading to new needs. But even political situations are changing. Now we have a CAP that has to be rewritten. We are experiencing probably the biggest large exit from the EU, which is the Brexit. And then there is a lot of doubts about whether signing multilateral, bilateral agreements, and so on and so forth. So all of this makes the GI system get to the point of reviewing what is happening and perhaps correcting maybe some criticalities and developing good things. So Qualivita as a foundation is willing to collect the observation and comments of all the stakeholders that decided to participate to today's event, so that we can actually make new proposals and deal with these issues. This is a technical meeting, and we divided it into 5 sessions. We have 1 speaker per session that is going to be chairing the other panelists, and I would like to ask everyone to comply with the 3 minutes speech that you have, and we'll be trying to give time to everyone. We won't be able to get into detail about things, but at least we can produce guidelines that we can present to the authorities and the stakeholders in general. Out of the 5 sessions, as you can see in the program, in the agenda, We have number one, that is a new pact between consumers and local communities. Of course, the GI are linked to their territory, and they guarantee consumers so that they are both supporting each other. There are quite a lot of regulations and controls, and we need to see whether these are still suitable in the light of the blockchain developments and so on and so forth. The session will be coordinated or chaired by Luca Giavi, director of the Prosecco Consortium. And then the session number two, it's the evolution of territorial governance and economic development. And they will be speaking about the many new factors, which is the growing investment of foreign businessmen or entrepreneurs in the GI system of Italy. Also, in the governance, we have relations with the institutions and also a greater presence of large companies that should protect small companies. And everything will be chaired by Riccardo Deserti, who is the director of the Parmigiano Reggiano Consortium. And then a third session is the CAP post 2020. This includes the relationships between Italy and the other EU countries, and it will be chaired by Fabio Del Bravo from ISMEA. The fourth session will speak about the international agreements and protection. That's another hot topic. You know that there are new agreements being signed with Japan, such as CETRA and many others, and it will be chaired by Massimo Vittori from Director of Origin. And the last session will be about sustainability, which is another important topic nowadays. Sustainability in every single aspect. We need to define well what we mean by sustainability, and we need to also see how we can measure it according to the certification, because it is connected to it. In fact, the session will be chaired by Maria Chiara Ferrarese, who is the Vice Director of the CSQA. Also, I would like to thank all the foreign speakers, and because it's important to have an exchange of views, not only among the consortia members, but also with the stakeholders from other countries. And that's why we invited France and Portugal and others, but also we invited someone from Japan and from Norway, because we want to know what they think about it. Now, I'm done. I will leave the floor to more important speakers, and I would like to remind you that at the beginning of April, Qualivita will organize an event in April, and will continue speaking about these topics. And so we will continue with the results of this meeting that will be presented in Brussels as well. So thank you to Cesare Mazzetti. We can start our kickoff meeting. And so we have 5 working groups. We are going to have the chair of each meeting who will be speaking 3 minutes, and then there are 8 panelists. The groups will end at 12:30. The minister will join us at 12:30. Will present the results of this work that was done in the morning. And unfortunately, the minister can be with us only between 12:30 and 1:15, so perhaps we'll have the chance to exchange a few words during the light lunch as well. So please, all the speakers, we are all specialized in the GI subject. So please be very technical and speak about the topics that you are assigned. And you see there will be a few slides, and all the speakers will be presented on the screen. And so when you see your name, please come to the podium. So we are starting with Luca Giavi. So thank you for having us, and also thank you for allowing me to be the first chair of the new session. About 25 years ago, as the chairman of Qualivita was mentioning, this is when the IG regulations were included in the EU regulations, we can say that there are still many things that are not clear to our interlocutors or counterparts, especially when it comes to dissemination of results. I believe that new technologies are giving us new opportunities in order to avoid having mainstream slogans such as blockchain, so that there will be something that is beyond folklore. And we have huge opportunities, financial opportunities as well. The figures presented by Qualivita and Ismea say so. In the social and economic dimension of our local situations, we are well aware of our responsibilities, and we need to acknowledge that some mistakes were made, and we can identify the limits that we encountered. At the same time, pressuring or pressing the authorities to give us regulations that can truly help us promote and protect our designations in order to enhance and promote that public pact that are our sets of production rules, so that we can maintain a certain quality within the communities and the local situations we are working in. Today, just like we wrote in the introduction to during the introduction, the GI system is based on a pact signed with consumers and local authorities. And I think we need to start from the local authorities in order to enhance and develop, because any geographical indication must promote the possibility of enhancing the designation of that area. So we need to connect the producers and the local communities, because that is based on respect, and respect means responsibilities on both sides. In this sense, we believe that nowadays we will avail ourselves of transparent instruments and open instruments, because will be able to become even more transparent in the protection systems. In terms of protection, sometimes we forget that the sanctions and the controls are often linked to the systems that we represent. Often we can read it in the press in order to demolish that system with scandals, that that system that we tried to develop for many years. So a sort of a trustworthy relationship that must be supported by the protection consortiums and by the authority. In order to make it evident, we avail ourselves today of new instruments that will have to develop further to know better from a technical point of view, to make sure that they are effective, that they are that can be implemented in our production system. All of this is based on a new approach, on a new cooperation that we should be able to implement within the protection consortium at best. The interpreters would like to highlight that the speaker was reading something that was not given to them, so we tried our best to keep up with his pace.
Thank you to everyone. It's emotion for us. It would be a better place than these wonderful area. The beauty is also in our agri-food sector. So I can see this a separation which can separate the beauty from the beauty that we produce in everyday work. This is the best place to submit our work of the Venezia Consortia of protected POD, which would like to have all the efficiency of last year the nomination after a long time preparation. In order, we wanted to have a total traceability, and this was not sure because just a territory of a province for a total of 26,000 hectares would have been able to fix a very stringent rule in order to get a product which had, thanks to the sensitivity of the full chain, a full wish to be traceable and transparent. So putting together, this was our experience that I wanted to submit, put this different sensibility together, the many areas together. We checked within our territory because Trentino, Veneto, and Friuli are similar, but they are not. And the problem was to go one step forward and 5 in advance. This was certainly the most beautiful part of our project. This example of dignitarism, of unitarism, for example, the fact of being able to unite consortium was successful at the beginning for putting onto road this new POD, million of bottles, and we decided together to set rules which led to a label. About the traceability system, I don't need to speak. We know everything, all of us. We selected the maximum guarantee through a state label. It was not certain to do that. We could have decided to create a COD, a global COD, but all the chain and also the agricultural part thought that they would like to start a project since the beginning with a very high value. So we managed to group all together all the label in the Venezia area. So all the Pinot Grigio, for example, is tracked. This is extremely important because this means to accept shared rules, which lead to management of production. And management of production can provide value if we don't consider the quantity of product to be issued on the market. We cannot think about valuing of the production. So I would like to go deeper into this subject. I'm finished. Now, as Daniele Barufaldi is the president of POD Cinta Siena. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. Well, I'm at home, actually. Cinta Senese is from Siena, above all from Tuscany. So the pact with consumer. How can you do a pact with consumer if you don't try before to make them know what's behind a geographical indication? A trademark is something is produced by a private producer and protected by a geographical indication are the result of a request of a group of citizens that for passion or would like to build something important for the consumer. This is our pact with the consumer. A geographical indication, not everybody knows how difficult it is, how many time you have to dedicate to it. I'm just talking about my geographical indication. We have to fight for years with the Minister of our Agriculture in Brussels. And lastly, we obtained this recognition showing the historical importance of this product. As you know, Cinta Senese has a very old origin, ancient origin. Just to was mentioned in the government palace, they already talk about Cinta Senese. So the pact with the consumer has to be established once we have explained what's behind, and then the consumer will understand the importance of this indication, geographical indication, because besides quality and sacrifice we provide the consumer, we must also consider the relation with the community. And above all, in this historical moment where tourism is extremely important, we offer the possibility to show our breeding, how the animals live, and what we really offer. So I believe that not only as we as a consortium, we have to favor our associate. We have to help our associate to act properly in relation with the consumer, and in addition to that, with also the institutions must help us in order to help us to be a link, an intermediate link with all the association in order to solve our difficulties. I'm sorry, I have not a habit to speak to an audience, but I believe that our value is extremely important. It has to be communicated and expressed with the expression with the relation with the consumer and local community. Then Giorgio Bustico is the ASTI CJDO Consortium. Good morning to everybody. 10% of my time will be dedicated to subjects which do not relate directly to the relations with consumer, just to thank Qualivita, because being able to put together 40 speakers which will speak on common subjects, and not of their own reality, but the important points which have to be the summarizing point, which at the end of our session will be submitted to the ministry, and we will have to understand as the our reality. A ministry who already proved to have great consideration of consortia, both for the promotion of the international territory and abroad. It's difficult to talk about a pact with consumers when a consortium in itself is not updated with current legislation. We have all the means, all the weapons to fight against counterfeit in order for the protection of consumers, protection, information of our realities, the valuing of our territory. But consortia have to evolve and adapt to your community regulations. Today, regulation talks about organization of producer. Consortia are not that. Association of producer, and a consortium does not represent it, although there is inside they have all the representative of the producing chain. So as a unique text of professional bodies, so we do not comply with this title, but we must present as a reference point in order to ensure the price, for example, to consumer. I've read many times interview with Zaya, who was complaining about a minimum reference point, and the ministry is actually working on it. Consequently, on this subject, the consortia have not the possibility to act. Above all, consortia which have a need separation between those who produce wine and those who market wine. There was an agreement in force since 1979 with our region, the agricultural side and industrial side, which established a line for future denomination with prices and quantity. But this is no longer feasible. So environmental sustainability. This is an extremely important subject for consumers, so we must try as a consortium to get certification of our denomination, both on the environmental, social, and economical point of view. We must fight against counterfeit, use all the possible system. My denomination, at least 10% of turnover is produced in Ukraine and Russia, so we must defend ourselves. Traceability is another extremely important point. We have a label. Okay, a state label. Thank you very much. Now is Paolo Cesaretti from the Protection Consortium of Casciotta d'Urbino. I'll try to be short. Casciotta d'Urbino, this consortium, it's a cheese. It produces 170 tons. As the other side of the OPD, it's a product which is produced by the community, and now we are recording a decrease in production because there is not enough milk. So the problem is not the market, but milk. So we should aim at, when we are doing that, in being able to strengthen this relation with the community, because it's the community which permits us to live. So we must be able to develop a product, to develop our product, have sufficiently milk in order to face the market. It's not a heritage of the farmer or the consumer. We must people understand, citizens and consumer, all the people who live in the same area, that we are actually managing a part of that territory. We are part of the richness of that territory. This is the most important point of this kind of relation. And with the consumer, we as a consortium, we must guarantee traceability, quality, etc. We are investing on the farmer system in order to improve production, improve milk production, in order to have traceability of this milk and know how it is produced, in order to be able to transmit this information in communication. We are now studying these labels and also the QR code. And we would like to put some microchip in the label in order to give all the consumers and above all young people who like this type of cheese, in order to provide all the necessary news on this product. This is my contribution as a consortium. Thank you, Paolo. Now, Salvatore Martorana and Valdi Mazzara, POD Consortium. I can talk a little bit more because you brought me some cannoli from Sicilia. I thank you, everybody. I would like to thank Qualivita for this day of discussion. As far as our experience is concerned, talking about the pact with the consumer in 2019, there will be a new pact in 2020. We must consider, obviously, new technologies. I'm not very updated on this because I had a telephone without internet, just number to call, but I had to adapt to new technologies because everybody can buy what they like from home without moving. So today there is a very important communication as a single consortia. We have traceability, we have everything, but often the link missing between consortia and consumers is when they call our office, we would like have the product, where can we buy it? So the consortium has to provide a list, and then they look for the product. In my opinion, it would be important to create a format, besides the format Qualivita, a format where the consumer can click and find all the the product and buy directly from the side the product. First of all, to help the small producers in order to be able to sell the product by skipping some step. And for example, in the great chain, you don't need to have, it's not sufficient to have the geographic indication label, but sometimes the small companies, the small farm, do not have enough money to have this kind of label. So those who want to go on to buy from traditional China can do that, but this could be helpful in order to reply the consumer needs and group all the geographical indication product. Okay, as a consumer, I know the oil from Sicily, but not from Liguria, or other product from Pantelleria, or the product from other area of Italy. We could group all together all these geographical indication products, because as a consortium we cannot sell and telling them, okay, I gave you the list, consumer, that's all. So should facilitate this relation. Thank you for your intervention. Now, Cristiano Ludovici. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Qualivita for this event. So my intervention would aim to the meaning that for Tuscan region is given by Tuscan region to denomination. Sometimes there are variable geometry, variable geography with the variable numbers, so they cannot be considered all of them at the same in the same way. Sometimes some of them have a greater value compared to success they have on the national and international market, though others are associate their success and survival to the territory where they are produced. Geographic indication will not give food for everybody in the world, so for all the people who will live on this planet. And Tuscan geographical indication even less, but in my opinion, they not have to be a elite phenomena, only for people who have money and can have access to the excellent product. So it's very important when a consumer or even a tourist who comes and visit our extraordinary landscape, etc., or someone who is sitting in Wyoming, American, approach a geographical indication territory, he approaches the territories. Many of them select a product because they are good, they are excellent product, but our challenge is to make this choice, a choice of the territory in that moment. At that moment when I taste a glass of wine or a piece of cheese, I'm tasting the territory which, thanks to its own territorial culture, reality produces that product. Therefore, that identity, which is a social cultural identity, represents the value of that territory that in that moment I'm consuming, between brackets, and also sustaining, supporting. So it could be a sort of rural bond for the territory, a sort of tax which is used to support the territory. And to do that, it's necessary to value the brand of that territory. And it's clear that as a Tuscan region, we are absolutely responsible for that. And this pact between the territory and the consumer is made thanks to the Tuscan brand, which is recognized and represents a value. People are angry of Tuscan, and if Tuscany represents something more, it's a good thing. We are excellent product and can approach the market. Thank you, Gennaro. Now I'm calling Deserti for the panel number 2, the evolution of territorial governance and economic development. My task is to identify why we choose this subject, which are the expectation and contributions of the different participants. The governance subject can be defined in many ways. I would like to address it as a software of the geographical indication system at the basis of regulations of the work done in tens areas as the denomination. So the hardware, this is the set of regulations and products which slowly are affirming themselves on the market. So the governments, as far as the system is concerned, has to be seen in a dynamically. So according to phases and cycles, so the governments, so there's a software must be able to reply to meet requirements of that moment. We see governance in this way, certainly after a phase of the last 30 years where the input and needs coming from the problem issues associated with offer and demand. So where the dimensions of production was extremely important, I mean the primary production system. Now we have to face, and this is the subject of our discussion, an evolution in the government's need. The markets have extremely important geographical dimensions. The complexity of the chain is considerable with respect to 30 years. That's why we need to talk about governance, how to talk about it. We must start from the bottom. Before asking others what they can do more, we need an internal analysis because there are problems associated with internal governments inside the consortia. So the second question is, after this step, what can we do more in order to improve this software, this system, in order to be able to improve thanks to role and rules, and thanks to the geographic indication system, how can we express our best quality? So this title, under this point of view, recalls governance evolution, but also the economy of territory. So the challenge we have to meet in the future, in that challenge, the territory will have an extremely important role, and it will link to demand, and it is a pool for different subjects concerning our products, which is underused with respect to our potential. And the link with the territory is a central subject for the future. We need also to create these governments for the future. So there is another concept which is important, the geographical indication, the protected denomination of origin. We must create the gross product, the product. So it's extremely important. And contrary to many other action which can be established on the territory, this activity on the geographic indication and protected denomination of origin cannot be transferred elsewhere. So we are genetically linked to the territory. So there is a great difference in the approach with the economy of the territory. So instead, if we invest on the economy of the territories, they will help us with the value of the fact that we cannot move the production, we can displace the production. This with respect to the program we had.
Che riunisce
So this is a consortium that put together three important designations of Italian cold cuts. Roberto, you have 3 minutes. So as we were saying earlier, I represent a very small consortium of all the POD cold cuts of the Piacenza area. And so I truly represent all 13 producers that account for 97% of the entire production. The the cold cuts company from Piacenza were among the first ones to apply for a geographical indication recognition. And so it's a small consortium, but since then we started testing out which duties and we needed to have, but also what we could expect from the authorities. So after 23 years, we can summarize, starting from positive results. First of all, the bet of our producers was absolutely positive because the consortium, and its members kept growing over the years. This can demonstrate that the consortium did not just manage the productions formally, but truly tried to promote the products on the market. So, the product became more recognized on the market, and definitely they became more renowned, and their awareness grew. Also, everything was also due to the funding from the Emilia-Romagna regional government that allowed us to have important cooperation with the Ministry of Agriculture, but also with other foundations like Qualivita as well. This allowed our producers to believe in the potential of its consortium and to invest increasingly more in the activities that the consortium was proposing. So notwithstanding these activities, the consortium has to deal the different daily situations, and this is a way of putting, this is something shared by all the small consortia of Italy, the many of them. I will give you an example. The participation to projects, for instance, to have funding, for a small consortium, it's always harder. And even when we are awarded funding, then there are other issues, other difficulties for managing such projects: banks, bank guarantees, financial reporting, and so on and so forth. So I can tell you that the potentials of the GI are manifold. Our experience tells us that if we want to, in a way, promote the designation system, we need to become increasingly aware about consumers. Only 33% of consumers are aware of the important role that we are playing. In conclusion, I can say that one of the goals for the next 10 years is to develop governance that are truly able to promote the GI, the geographical indications, even in small situations just like ours, because it's important to exchange views and opinions like it's done in this very interesting meeting of today. And now we have Carlo Piccini from the Lambrusco Consortium of Modena, the Lambrusco wine of Modena. So good morning to everyone. Congratulations for this great initiative. I would like to greet you on behalf of Claudio Biondi, the chairman of the consortium that could not be with us today, but also I would like to greet you on behalf of the many consortium members. So let's continue speaking about the geographical indications. And in the light of the development of the geographical indication system, we need to promote the role played by the different stakeholders because, they are new drivers of the entire territorial economy. So, consortium in Latin means to share the, your destiny. And so there is a lot of consortium members that decided to share their destiny about their production of these specific wine, especially by those companies that are working in a similar manner. So this is also expressed by the designation of origin, especially by informing customers. The consortia also strive for the common good. And it's not just a generic discipline, it's a sort of an inner conquer, it's a moral rule that it will convey to future generation the story, the history of and the productions of a territory. And so because it's the origin and the culture of a territory that will have to be conveyed to everyone. And so different areas have a history they need to share, and so they belong to the entire community, a community that learned how to emphasize an agri-food production that became established in a specific area and became quite famous. The Protection Consortium start from farming the land in a certain manner up to our tables. So on the one hand, if on one hand we need to focus on quality, on the other, we really need to develop new contents in order to become even more responsible in terms of social, economic, and environmental sustainability of a specific area. So at that point, the consortium will allow us to protect the products and in a way protect consumers at the same manner.
Stefano Campatelli, direttore del Consorzio della Vernaccia di San Gimignano.
Grazie.
Timerli davanti, Stefano,
grazie.
Perché te va un po' lungo, lo so.
No, stai tranquillo. Le denominazioni d'origine.
So the geographical denomination of origins are very successful. 65% of the Italian wine belongs to one of these designations, and that developed very much over the years. Now, everyone speaks about terroir or territories, and that is very important. Even those who didn't believe in this system 25 years ago. I live in Siena. Once I entered my pharmacy, my local pharmacy, and I saw something on a shelf which was toothpaste from Siena. So I thought, what? Toothpaste from Siena? So, what I'm saying is this is an example about how important it is to refer to a territory. So the governance is something that can be promoted only by the producers. The denomination, the designation belongs to the producers. And I believe that it is very important that within the denomination, within the supply chain, there is a pact among the different players. So those who are taking care of a marketing stage cannot prevail over the producers, and therefore you need to have a certain balance, which means that the governance has to be made by the producers and the different players within the consortium. So you need a pact, you need an agreement, you need to use the tools that the law gives us. We established that we cannot work on prices, and which is fine, but we can work on quantities, for instance, and that, of course, will affect prices. And in the Siena areas, there are some companies or areas or designations that allowed us to, that developed what the Italian law is approving. And so within these 50 years of designation of origin for wine, I believe that the quality of wines improved, and that is a necessary condition, but perhaps it's not enough anymore for those who will be governing the designations, because in the future, perhaps, something more will have to be done, not just quality. Thank you very much, Stefano. And now we have Mario Emilio Cicchetti. And he did not bring this famous San Daniele ham, unfortunately. So let's try to focus on what was said so far, which is what the consortia do. And after almost 25 years from the publication of the Italian law 527 for the protection consortium, let's see what are the additional developments. And so far things went well, but perhaps in 2019 this model needs to be revised. And because the market context changed, the characteristics of the producers changed, but also the difficulties that the consortium or the consortia has to deal with have changed as well. Therefore, we need to have different areas of work, and perhaps even having a sort of a critical analysis of what we did so far. The EU legislation is focusing on the problems, and one of them is the legitimacy of the consortium within the national framework, because after all, these are private entities, and they cannot be regulated with the same system for differentiated manner. And the supply chains are organized in such manner that sometimes they don't comply with the legislation. So these are the three issues we should concentrate on. And so what are the solutions that we need to develop? First of all, perhaps we will have a consortium type A and a consortium type B according to their functions. Also, perhaps we can try to unify the management of the issues, and these are different elements that the Italian authorities has to manage consistently. And in the end, also, we need that to realize that we are not folkloristic authorities. The areas where these productions are taking place are an important element of the national GDP. And so this is not just a matter of culture or local culture, but rather the GI and the controlled designation of origin products play an important role in the Italian economy. Now, Giovanni Gallisto, who is part of the Consortium for the Protection of the Pecorino Romano Roman sheep cheese. Let's say that thank you for inviting me. The protection of the many agri-food products is a little bit different from what the English version of the same matter should be. Consortium are made of volunteer participation, and that allowed over time, even before the law of 526, I remember the old law 525 for cheese, and that led to a stabilization of relationships between producers and consortium itself. The law 526 had the merit to improve such relations, but now scenarios have changed. The policies of protection have changed rules very much, and without territories, our decisions are not enough. Without being, without the contribution of the local producers, you can have different issues. And why does that happen? Because along with local communities, we need to find a new form of cooperation in order to, let's say, maintain the country area, because Siena is in a beautiful location and it was farmers that protected it over the centuries. But there are some farmers in the PDO area that are truly working on the entire tangible material. And so this is a way of protecting the environment and the local traditions. But this policy perhaps should entail the compulsory nature of being part of a consortium. So, in a way, all the members of a consortium should share the management of a certain territory, and that should include also local or regional or national authorities. Often this cooperation is not there, perhaps even for cultural reasons. So the conditions of, we cannot be affected by sales or marketing, and perhaps we should go beyond the volunteer association, but rather it should be compulsory for everyone when you're producing in a certain area to be part of a consortium. That could be a starting point, perhaps even promoting the role of the GI for the protection of foodstuff. Again, the speaker was reading quite fast, something that was not given to the interpreters. And now we have Carlotta Gori from the Chianti Classico Wine Consortium. There's a lot of women in the Chianti Classico Consortium. And anyway, thank you very much to Qualivita for the fantastic invitation that they gave us. And the Protection Consortium in the last 15 years, thanks to a legislation that promoted the enhancement of the foodstuff in a way, developed its ability to guide the wine productions, but also the foodstuff production in more demanding markets. And when it comes to protection, especially in the light of technical and legal issues, I believe that the strategic and economic choices that the consortia can deploy become essential in order to define the positioning of a designation or of an IG. But also you need to increase the added value. You need to add value. It doesn't mean only to promote. Please forgive me for the provocation, but the promotion activity, which is absolutely paramount, perhaps it's the least meaningful in order to create a value for a denomination. I think that it's essential in the light of our experience to address or to develop the search for quality of our producers, but also the improving quality has to be based on the typicity or the typical feature of a specific product and the local production. It's important that for economic growth, and perhaps it is absolutely necessary, in my mind, to have synergies and interactions with with similar activities, perhaps in the same areas where the products of origin are coming from. Perhaps maybe by using representation instruments that are increasingly wide. In Tuscany, for instance, we have rural districts and perhaps synergies with authorities that are different from consortia. Because in my mind, an excellent product can be such only if it comes from an excellent area that preserves its characteristics. So it is absolutely necessary that consortia are given growing tools for managing a designation. And also, perhaps prices cannot be controlled, but also there are many other control and management mechanisms when it comes to supply and demand that can be used. Tuscany is a good example of that. We used often these tools under many circumstances. Mr. Scalacci knows very well these mechanisms, and for instance, he led to a reduction of the yields and many other things. And there is one more item I would like to discuss with you. As a consortium, perhaps we should face the challenge to play a more central role when it comes to bargaining or negotiation. Perhaps we should put together negotiations that lead to have greater control between supply and demand. Our French counterparts capitalized on this ability, and perhaps we should do so as well. And now Mario Montanari from the Emilia-Romagna. Please, Mario, no more than 3 minutes, because otherwise we'll be extremely late. I'll try. So first of all, thank you for the great opportunity that you gave me. So, protection, enhancement are the keywords for consortia. But also, as public authorities, we need to do so as well. And for this reason, in our experience in Emilia-Romagna, that actually focused on quality and also the enhancement of geographical indications, it's very important to cooperate with consortia, and that is necessary to do so, because it is an added value that is as necessary in order to include geographical indications within the agri-food policies. For instance, not all the consortia can organize themselves in the appropriate form, because you need some professional skills, but also financial investments that some consortia cannot face. But there have been different forms of cooperation in order to manage the resources of a certain territory. Also, when it comes to protection, there is a public function that the consortia are playing. And I was thinking about something that is also a provocation in a way. I was thinking that other producers are playing a public role with the OCM, and they have instruments and that can truly support their functions. In the as to the IG or the GI, we do not have instruments that are as good and actually that allow us to manage that public interest of consumers, but also for producers themselves. Last but not least, as to promotion, promotion is playing an important role in our policies outside of the European markets. From this point of view, being able to bring the consortia along gives us a sort of a competitive advantage, and even more so if the consortia could really represent the local productions or the local companies. In other words, companies that on a local level can make financial decisions and truly make a difference. And now, Fiorenzo Rigoni, who is the chairman of the Asiago Cheese Consortium. Good morning, and I would like to greet you on behalf of our 47 companies and of the 1,400 breeders that are working, between the Trentino Alto Adige and Veneto regions. The operational context of the protection consortia is maybe outdated. And the law was written about 20 years ago when the market conditions and the operational needs were completely different. About 20 years ago, the dairy, farmers were working within the milk share of the CAP regulations, and there were similar products, and there were also the competition that was not as important as it is today. So over the last 20 years, competition has been growing. And this is something that not only the consortia has to pay attention to, but also the individual companies that sometimes are family-run companies that end up competing with different counterparts on different market segments. So now, we are asking for the protection of two concepts. First of all, the protection consortium is a collective, is a community concept, and it cannot be blackmailed by one single large producer. Also, the geographical indication must protect the producers in order to defend a tradition and typical traits that are made by multiple producers, and sometimes even small companies that often see in the consortium the only way to promote their products, to make sure that our protected geographical indications, but also our protected designation of origin to survive. We need to make sure that they are well represented, and therefore I believe that all the producers of a certain area should be part, in a compulsory manner, of a consortium, so that there will be less internal tensions and nervousness, and therefore promoting onto the outside, therefore promoting development and growth. So this is what we are asking for today, and this is very urgent. The tools in order to update the representativeness of, in this current scenario, because the old rules have been are outdated, and there are new rules that the consortia have to work on. And now let's go to the third group with Fabio Del Bravo.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Mauro. Let's talk immediately about this subject, since we have time constraint. The first element I would like to underline with respect to PGI, and we are actually talking about something inexistent, useless. It's a very important sector, is extremely concrete, and the concreteness level is directly proportional to what will happen from today to the definition of the new regulations. On the basis of every further consideration, there will be a change in the point of view and in politics, which will be moved from compliance policy to results. And this field and the space which will be given to each member states we will have to work in this space, actually. If we look in the past, plannings 713 and also the term as far as spending is planned, it's quite clear how the CAP is defined, says how these all the AGP were not actually stimulated. We are talking about 1.5% of the expense of about 6.4 billion. So the old planning, which was destined to politics of competitiveness. So the obviously, from this point of view, the drawing of the strategic national plan, which is provided for by the present regulations, it's very important to define a national policy, above all for the geographical indication. It's the first time maybe that there is an important opportunity in order to define a long-term strategy for geographical indication. It's clear that the two directions towards which can work are, on one side, the reform of the organization and regulations of geographical indication is the fact of being able to prepare a structure which considers delegation which are given to each member states in order to define, to adapt the structure, the bureaucratic structures to do needs and new situation which is charging. And on the other side, we should try to define in the rural policy a plan which can value the economical role, that is the territorial level, so the capacity of acting not only agriculture and foodstuff, but also on restoration, cultural heritage, and etc. So selection criteria and favor compliance and integration in geographical indication of the important subjects like sustainability, and keep in mind the difference between small product and large scale product. And an operating proposal. We work with Maura in these years for trying to animate the debate at the regional level. So the rural network and the national program financed with the rural development plan, which in the next 2 years will be directed also according to the ministry indication, in order to develop and sustain the new community policy for agriculture, is to see how the ministry, the local authority can work together and write down the new regulations. Thank you, Fabio. So the first intervention is from Silvana Ballotta, Business Strategies. She's an expert in project and OCM program. Good morning to everybody. So the subject of the new CAP, when it was proposed, well, what I thought is we could talk about reduction in funds, we could talk about bureaucracy, and then I thought that since I like to provoke a little bit, I would like to launch an idea and a point of reflection which starts from an aspect which was touched in the previous intervention, but on which I would like to highlight. Subsidiarity will be an excellent opportunity. We'll be able to use it and manage it in the most appropriate way in order to create an efficient program and in order to get the benefit medium and long term with respect to all the work we are doing. Subsidiarity, which will oblige all the member state, and the specific case we are talking about Italy, to perform the analysis of needs and how to detect these needs. This will be an excellent opportunity in order to group in a team, to group together all the private public forces. Someone before me has already remarked that. So governments will be an extremely important tools if it will be able to put all the players on the field in order to allow them to value our agriculture, agri-food heritage. We talked about valuing. When I talk about valuing, I talk about taking into consideration of crossover competence, because we can go all over the world and promote our product, but we are not able to keep the pace with innovation, with training, which are essential elements on which we must act constantly, both outside and inside. Will always be a little bit in difficulty with respect of what we would like to produce. So my reflection with respect to new CAP, it's an excellent opportunity, and we need a crossing over of players in order to have a shared results. Next intervention, Fabrizio Filippo from the Tuscan Consortium for PGI oil, olive oil. Good morning. Thank you for your invitation. Just some reflections and talking about CAP, which is associated with production of olive oil. We heard in the introduction of Del Bravo how the GE, which was the weight of GE in the old programming, and now the new one. The weight should be even more important for the reason we talked about yesterday. The geographical indication, our trademark, which we must defend, and today represents a lot because we combine together two main parameter, quality and origin. They can represent an engine of development for our country. I'm not making distinction between small and big consortia. A small consortium provides local response. For example, I come from Pisa, and the PDO of Pecorino of that area in the future, they are important. They produce. We will be able to make these consortiums in the area of Voltorra. They will use also the PDO. So from a small consortium, it will become an engine for development of the territory. It's necessary to simplify, to streamline all the activity also in this sector without lowering the guarantee level and protection level, which are essential. It is clear that thanks to the new planning, we must favor communication policies which can create aggregation, association, also in order to value the product on the market without neglecting actions which can increase the value, the sensational value of the product on the market for the consumer. On this side, we must work again a lot. When we talk of CAP, we talk about resource, financing, and helps. I think that I've said that for many times. In the new programming, we must make a distinction between the use of research, that is the help. So the objective is not the funding, but has to be considered as the tool to achieve an objective. Just one example, in the old programming, there was a measure, if it was correctly applied as far as oil production is concerned, provided oil consumes a lot of money. So a use coupled with the certified product. If it was given exactly to certified product, it was useful to allow consortium to increase, to improve their function. But in the contrary, unused those resources, unfortunately, only for a few smart, so-called smart people, which are not smart actually. Thank you for invitation. So this is the first intervention of an association after many consortia. Two-thirds of the nomination are promoted and valued by association and committee and not by consortia. And this, our Consortia is a new reality. 17 are GPI certified, and we produce 1,300 tons and 18 in 70. 17 and 18 it will be higher. So we express €1 million of added values and of turnover and 30% of export. So we must thank the Tuscan region because the Tuscan region supported us with this project in order to make this new GPI be known with an investment of €50,000, and 70% will be given by the region as a contribution according to the plan of the Tuscan region. Unfortunately, we will not be able to participate to this call of funding because there is a constraint which implies the registration in the Chamber of Commerce, so a VAT number. So our association are no-profit association, which are provided for the civil code, which have a long history in the back, and also by other not recognized associations. So which is our request? Since producer would have to make a consumer know the PGI, etc., and also the enterprise, why should we make this effort vain? Since GPI are represented by association and committees, so this request is made to Tuscan region, the ministry, and the European Union. And the ministry, we already talked with them and asked them to help this reality to grow and develop. But these tools for growing and developing have never arrived. As far as the CAP reform, only 15% of consumers know what is a PDO, a GPI. So it's up to us to make them know, so we can realize a vertical knowledge as far as, for example, the trademark of Cantuccini GP. We cannot allow everybody to know it. So we ask for an European intervention in order to permit all consumers to know this IGP and not financed by small producer. There are a lot of confusion if there will be a reform of this law. It's important to make them understand PDO has certain characteristics, GPI have other characteristics, and we'll look at the word because the Cantuccino Toscano is an export product. Our model are Parmigiano Reggiano and these great Italian designation which are famous in the world. We have no problem for a global production. Cantuccino is a democratic product. Next intervention is Nicola Materazzo represented the, he's not here. So the next intervention is Alberto Mazzoni, is the Wine Protection Institutes. He's not here. So Luca Pollini Tuscan Maremma Wine Consortium. Oh, you have some minutes more. Thank you, everybody, and thanks to Qualivita for this extremely important event to represent the consortium, which is quite new. It was born in 2010, and the consortium in 2014 in a southern area of Tuscany. Requirements for the new CAP are quite clear. Some of them are quite clear. And in my opinion, they refer to the subject of streamlining, which is absolutely linked to the subject of valuing, since simplification is not only emptying the main concept, which concern the denomination of origin. We have seen some draft proposal, which actually tending to extremely simplify the concept of geographical indication and removing some of the pillars. For example, the indispensable contribution, human contribution in the creation of a typical product. This is not simplification. By simplification, we mean other aspect, which often act in such a way that to push many producers away, because the bureaucratic weight is concern many aspects, but also affects the operator who wants to work in this field. For example, Consortia. Just think about the fact of producing a request for production, geographical indication production, because you have also to make a picture of market orientation, production selection. Sometimes we are blocked for years in a process which is extremely complex and bureaucratic. And another important aspect, in my opinion, concerns the numerical presence of indications, of geographical indication. For example, in viticulture, we have GPI and PDO. We have more than 523 indications. Most of them are unknown, and once they are recognized, the same producer didn't have any interest in using them. So we should also think about that, which is the purpose of having denomination of origin where the producer themselves do not believe in them, which is the sense of it. So we should reflect on this and choose mechanisms which already exist in the law. Just talk about the sets of regulation for denomination of origin. So we should restructure the system, which also come out all the different aspects which exist. For example, our denomination, it's a large denomination born on the basis of a previous IGP, and there are GPI, sorry, PGI, but our denomination without rules is just a system for attracting these denominations, which is a sort of a container, and so it can be used more easily on the market. So this is a reflection that a new CAP must take into consideration. Thank you to Polini. Next intervention is Francesco Seghi. It's a GPI Finocchiona Protection Consortium. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Qualivita, for this important day. PDO, the IGP, are the most intimate expression of the production of a territory from where they took their roots and their history. The expression of the how and people, and the people and know-how are fundamental, and so the CAP should take this into consideration. The territorial expression, this expression of tradition, of the know-how, of the vicinity to the territory, sometimes away from knowledge and of the consumer and consciousness of the consumer. Only part of consumers know what the IGP, PGI, and PDO are. So we should allow the consortium and producer association to fill this gap. We must increase the knowledge, improve the knowledge. We must inform the final consumer. It's absolutely essential and strategic for every consortium. And consumers are more and more conscious. They want to know and they want to have good products. We must produce culture. So invest in agri-food culture. So important point for association and consortium is to generate this information for consumers. It's important to talk with the consumer, and I would like to say it is vital for each consortium. The COP should also consider the other aspect. If we give more, we provide more knowledge, there is the possibility that this excess of communication, information produce good reputation, and this would give the consortium the possibility to invest in protection and safeguard, since we are protection consortium, and this is essential. Thanks to Francesco Seghi. I'm sorry, Flaminia Ventura is ill, so it's not present. Maybe, I don't know, say Sagno, Mazzoni, Materazzo, Mazzoni are here. If they are not there, we shift to the next session about an international agreement and protection of geographical indication. The coordinator is Massimo Vittori, Director of Origin. So good morning to everybody. Thanks to Qualivita. My task today is to introduce them on international agreement, since the object of Origin was created in 2003 was to favor a stronger international protection. Our dream of geographical indication was to have an international register which was able to protect all the geographical indication at the national level. In 2008, this dream was cancelled, since it was clear that it was not possible at the international level to obtain this because of the opposition of many countries, above all the United States. So we created a sort of bilateral agreement as far as in order to recognize some a limited number of geographical indication and to create bilateral agreement. At the same time, there was a resumption of negotiation for the intellectual property agreement to consider an agreement made in Lisbona, which included a limited number of countries, 28, in order to extend this agreement. There were progress were made. We think about the 90s and then the 2000 concerning only beverage and alcohol spirits. We managed to get some other agreement on the food stuff. And mainly the way how the Commission drew up this list of products to be protected in Canada and other Japan or other places, which is the minimum safeguard, the minimum protection, which are the rules of protection. You know, this is very important because we are always able to include these in this agreement, which are the exceptions, how these exceptions are negotiated. Is sometimes we have Canada and France and Japan. Some geographic indications were limited as protection. Were consortium part of this? Unfortunately not. And once again, geographical indications, are they aware that it is possible for cases for India and China where agreement with the European Union are late? Is it possible to look for registration, individual registration? Which are the costs? Then there is the Geneva Agreement. It seems that which is a reform of the Lisbon Agreement. They ask in this agreement, they ask the member state not to adhere to pay registration of the new geographical indication, to suspend geographical indication products like Modena vinegar, Parmigiano Reggiano, which are already and the register, so in certain way to lose rights already established. So we would like to respond to this subject and have an action at our level. So the first intervention will be made by Marco Alessandro Bani. It's Chianti Wine Consortium representative. Good morning to everybody, and thanks to Qualivita, which allows us today to analyze transversely requirements and issues which accompany denomination and laws. We are often used to meet, to meet other denomination of the sector, and we talk the same. We use the same language. But many times we ignore requirements, the issues which are submitted by other colleagues of agri-food sector, for example. So today, this event is extremely important in order to allow us to enlarge our knowledge. The subject of protection. I represent the Chianti Wine Consortium. So I'm giving my regards from the President Butti, and this is one of the oldest consortium and one of the oldest Italian denomination is a Chianti wine. Chianti wine, which was a sort of pioneer of Italian production towards the foreign market. Chianti is one of the most well-known words in the world, between the first 10 words, and is a collective imagination which recognizes the product as an equivalent of Italian style, of good way of good lifestyle and good eating, etc., and above all the Tuscan lifestyle. So the Chianti Wine Consortium, since it's diffused, well known all over the world, since a long time was the subject and will be the subject of imitation. So the main activity of our consortium was focused on a fight against or trying to limit all the counterfeit initiatives and for an improper use of the Chianti name and denomination. Certainly when we go abroad and we see Chianti Garibaldi and we go to the United States and we see a Chianti Rossi Carlo, which is a very important California brand, or other type of Chianti wine name, and since we knew we were weak in this way, and we had to give up fighting this kind of use of the Chianti denomination. So it's clear that denomination of origin needs a political support, a strong political support, in order to allow them to overcome difficulties that they have to face in certain countries. For example, the United States. United States represent the largest market for Chianti wine abroad. So it's clear that if we find their products, we call them legally authorized fraud. It's a Chianti which is not a Chianti because it doesn't come from Tuscany, but it is a product, anonymous product, we should know where it comes from. May come from the United States, or we don't know where. So my request is to is addressed to the political world. For certain countries, we obtained good results. In other countries, which are strategical for our production, for our denomination, I think that we need a greater and important political action. Thank you, Marco. Now it's Simone Calzi. It's the Parma Ham Consortium. Thank you for your invitation. As far as the bilateral agreement is the first point on which we want to start, the first objective, full protection of geographical indications. So we must talk about the system which is in force in the European community, so the regulation in force. This is the basis from which we can start discussion. It is essential and to involve all the consortia and all the negotiation steps. In consortia are the element who are in touch with all the difficulties with third countries, also from the legal point of view. It can provide also knowledge to all the members of the community, European community, all the criticality and what has been done to overcome this criticality. So, and not good results we have obtained, for example, because of a legislation existing in third countries as far as the intellectual property is concerned. So we are able to summarize criticality and know also the cost which are borne by the consortium and the loss of profit for producer of geographical indication product. So there are two main points: protection, first of all, and importance of involving consortium in negotiations. So if this is obtained, the question is we can compromise on solutions, and up to which limit. So some compromise acceptable if we must consider from where we start from in the third countries, but two conditions. The first one is to safeguard already acquired rights. For example, registration of the trademark according to the Lisbon Agreement, and exception can be accepted provided do not presume the improvement of conditions of protection which are included in the general agreement. So, for example, the agreement with Canada, for example, which can regulate, for example, our product, there is a clause, a provision of a coexistence between a Parma trademark and our protected denomination, that after 20 years of fighting, our producer were able to have access to the Canadian market using the prosciutto di Parma harbor, and these facilitate our introduction. Another point is concern the exceptions for the geographical indication for our cheese, for example, obliged our consortium to accept some compromise conditions which actually limited the marketing of cheese and allowed all those who produce some geographical indication product, for example, on the Vietnam market, they allowed to do that even after signing a contract. So it's important to well define things. Now Angela Crescenzi. Thank you, Ali Qualivita, for this important opportunity, which is, as Mani said, this double confrontation, wine and food, is absolutely determining. A feeling we have in Tuscany, which is diffused all over Italy, we have small consortia and large consortium, or group groups which have not been transformed in recognized consortium. And this, as far as protection is concerned, is a great problem, since at the national level, when the Commission start this agreement, this partnership, consortia, as we said, are not involved since the beginning. And when these consortia are not recognized, they are absolutely not involved, except sometimes we are included in a sort of shortlist. The problem is to understand which are the criteria according to which you are in the list or out of the list. How can we act as administration, not only the government, also the region? Because denomination of origin are an important economical result, besides all the value we talked about for, which are important to the territory. So it's important to understand how to be in relation with the Commission and know which are the criteria before starting negotiation, because once negotiations have started, they are not known at the beginning, and once the list is drawn, it's very difficult to modify that list. So another important thing is what the Commission is doing. I think that's absolutely valid. It is being able to find the international agreement where we destroy this concept of denomination protection only for Europe, but also we must enforce it for the other countries. This is important for a fundamental reason, because also in the other place there is a culture growing for appreciating these products, and so we must make this grow their product on these territories, for example, as a template for Japan. When you are out of the agreement, what kind of tools a consortium can use? So how the consortium, if it was out of the list, how can they understand which are the rules and the opportunities that the international agreement grant? They are not communicated except in the media, or as it happens with or China and Japan. And we know that they are published, and many agreements were signed, but the economical effect of these effects are not known. So the question is, what regions like Tuscany, for example, many other, what are the possibilities they have to favor this knowledge for consortia, and working together with the Ministry and the Commission, being able to communicate the advantages obtained thanks to this agreement. One thing I would like to highlight, once the Brexit will be signed, the dossier of the nomination is out. So this is very important. We must worry about that. Now Stefano Fontana, which is the Gorgonzola PDO Consortium. Good morning. Thank you. Bilateral agreement. Till 10 years ago, consortia, when they have products all over the world, tried to register their denomination with their own means. Then we had bilateral agreement. We were involved, so we had 2 bilateral agreements with Canada. It's accomplished, and it was signed without any involvement of consortium. As far as Japan is concerned, there were requests as far as information is concerned. And then we accepted some exception when we actually wanted a total protection of our denomination. But we learned that the agreement with Japan had already been signed. What are our expectations for the future? A greater involvement of protection consortia in order to be heard on our requirements. Each consortium has its own requirements and needs. And sometimes they ask for information, then we don't know what happens afterwards. This happened also for Canada. We were waiting for information about agency and authority making controls, which were the companies producing similar products. We still don't know. The agreement was signed, everything disappeared. So which are our expectations? A greater involvement of consortia. We cannot carry on in this way. There are requests of information, above all, from several ministries and from several general directions within the ministry. We need a single general directorate for the protection safeguard, grouping all the competences for the agreement of and for all the requirements of consortia. This is what we have to ask our administration. Thank you, Stefano. Next intervention, Alberto Improda. Good morning to everybody. My field is the protection of consortia, and so the defense of consortia in case of a breach of their rights from external aggression, unloyal competition, etc. So on this subject, I prepared a short report which is available and provided to organizations. And this document, I summarize the complexity of a situation and also the opportunity of defense, the tool we can use and lines we can adopt for this defense. So I would like to use these minutes at my disposal in order to share with you some reflections we came out from the discussion this morning. In particular, I would like to talk again about what was said by Bani of Chianti e Calzi for Parma ham. And it's important, I think it is absolutely essential to share, all the data for all the operators in the sector, above all for the fundamental data. When we go international market, when you propose products like those, the one which are produced consortia, the phenomenon of breach of rights, Italian sounding, the loyal competition, automatic, are natural, cannot be avoided. They are part of the pathological aspect of this game. What I would like to say is that protection of rights of consortia, it's a phase of this activity of consortium which cannot be avoided. So this principle has to be kept in mind, because quite often we take care of all the activity of a consortium activity, production, certification, communication, but we neglect protection, legal protection. We think that the fact of needing legal defense is considered an accident, an unexpected event. Fortunately, it is inevitable, and this is a part of being on the international market. So which are the consequences that we we understand from this? So the decision-making system, the public decision-making system, has to assist the consortium. In our system, there are many ways of protecting consortium measures. For example, concerning innovation, we have a lot of tools from this point of view, amortization, Sabatini law, etc. There are measures which support consortia as far as the promotion, certification is concerned. We need measures which can provide economical resources to consortia for the protection of rights, because without this legal protection, all the previous phase are sometimes can be hindered. So we can realize support system within the community regulations, within the antitrust regulation. This is an effort we must do, and we can do it. Now, Filiberto Mazzanti. Now it's Rocco Palma, which is the last speaker for this session. Good morning to everybody. I would like to thank Mauro and Massimo Vittori. I'm talking from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs point of view, and the office in charge with intellectual property. I'm working currently on a project of research on the legislative protection within Europe. So we talk about European institutions. Some small points are already drawn up and given to the Secretariat. There are 2 or 3 messages on how to influence the European institution and pass the ideas which grow within the reality and the consortia of the Italian Geographical Indication. So the Act of Geneva, I can see a lot of small problems in the text which has been proposed, but there are 2 points. Survival of denomination of origin, non-agri protection, integrity with our tools, and drawing up of list. So survival of denomination of origin, we actually hope the Act of Geneva will be successful. They are trying to create uniform rights applicable to all the European territory, and therefore separation for only 7 countries will create some distortion. It's clear then, until the Geneva Act will not fully enforce and reflect a unique protection on all the territory, we must protect in a strong way our registration of trademark, which is protected anyway by many other tools, international tools. This is not so important. Non-agri protection, the regulation text provides for a simple reject because juridically is a violation of the same Act of Geneva. So when we see that we reject protection, we create a problem. But also from the strategical point of view, there are countries like India, other countries. The Act of Geneva is an extra European Protection Act, so concerning all the other countries outside Europe. It is very important because since in Lisbon Agreement there was the production of industrial product. So my advice, I've written an article that I will provide involved in the subject, as far as there are alternative solutions. Another point is the drawing of list. There is a dilemma here. According to the proposal currently under discussion, essentially there is a general negotiation about drawing of list. There is a source of, there is a regulation which is submitted, so we have not solved our dilemma. That is, if this is a political action or a scheme of construction of private right. So Lisbon is quite different from the other agreement of ONP, which include requests which are actually passed to national office, which register that request. So the risk is that if our implementation regulation is applied, once they stop important interest in the Act of Geneva, they formalize title to opposition of registration of owner of trademark. So the risk is that when there is a forming of heading of title, can be invoked before the Court of Fundamental Rights and other type of tools. So the message is to reflect more, because the Act of Geneva could be hindered by actions who have a certain impact. The last message is governments, in order to pass better information and how they are formed within the countries, unified governance line. We talk about a lighter system. I think about the United States other committee, which in Italy, where, for example, we are integrated in their opposition. And just to close, use the right of investment for geographical indication. This is an alternative protection system, which is an alternative to this.
So the next group is GI and sustainability, with Maria Chiara Ferrarese. Thank you, Mauro, and good morning to everyone. It's up to me to introduce this session on sustainability, and we already heard sustainability being mentioned this morning. It is a very topical area, because international and national consumers realize that it's not enough just to speak about traceability, hygiene, and food security and safety, but it's important to become increasingly, aware about sustainability. Just think about the biodiversity, environmental impact, management of human resources, and so on and so forth. Over the last few years, many things have been done, and we don't want, many things happen also in terms of biofuels, whereas in the food and wine sectors, there are many companies that started to develop more knowledge about these whole endeavor, but also supply chains and so on. The problem is that we are missing a reference model that made it really hard to pass on to consumers this level of sustainability, and therefore it makes it easy to do something different. So on a international level, it is slightly different, and that led to different standards. And so brands or trademarks were defined, and the trademarks were approved, about fish and chocolate and coffee. So these brands or these trademarks are in a way used in order to disseminate the quality of the products they make. So you wonder, what is the relationship between the GI and sustainability? How possible it is for this sector to understand this new need? Let's, shall every company behave on an individual level and differently from others? Or perhaps should we have a sort of a proactive attitude within the different designations by identifying models of sustainability that can be, in a way, widespread within the different areas of productions? These are the themes that will be dealt with during the subsequent short presentation. So thank you very much to Maria Chiara Ferrarese. And now we'll start with Elena Albertini, that comes from Sicily. She from the Protection Consortium of the Red Orange of Sicily. So thank you very much for the introduction. And many things have been done in terms of food traceability and protection, because the supermarket chains definitely can guarantee traceability, but also the protection consortium have to do their part. So the red orange of Sicily is undergoing a lot of changes in order to have a sustainable growth, and it is important to include new developments. The consortium represents about 5% of the production farmers in Sicily, about 5% over a surface of 45,000 hectares between the province of Catania, Siracusa, and Enna. This is and it's very important because on the one hand, if the farmers are not interested in being part of a quality regime or scheme, and their lack of interest is probably due to the lack of greater returns, you can understand, on the other hand, that the consortium has wide margins of growth, but at the same time, it has to promote aggregation and supply services. The consortium at this moment is actually working on a sustainable management system that is based on integrated procedures. Therefore, we need to, make all payments and applications more automated, so that there will be an easier, administrative tasks, and at the same time promoting cohesions among the consortium members, so that they can actually communicate better. For instance, sharing applications such as the application 4.0 during the farming procedures, but also blockchains and so on and so forth. And that is needed in order to be present on national and international markets. This project is called Rouge, or Red. The red-orange in the green economy. So the next presentation will be Gianluigi Ligasacchi from ISIT, cold cuts or salamis. 3 minutes, Mr. Ligasacchi. Good morning. I would like to go back to what my colleague was saying earlier, because we organized a conference last week about the values of the protected origin designation and protected indications, geographical indications protection. And so we presented some economic forecasts of the Cattolica University, and they are saying that 2019 is not going to be a great year for consumptions, that will be reduced, even in terms of agri-food. But the forecast is that consumers are buying less, but they're buying better products. And so do these protected denomination of origin salamis premium products? And if they are premium products today, will they keep on being premium products tomorrow or in the future? So we need to make sure that these kind of productions are sustainable in the future as well. So the first sustainability must be of economic type. And there'll be others. Consumers also want to make sure that there are greater guarantees. They also want to make sure about the contents of all the products or foodstuff they're buying. But they also need to be aware that in order to adopt all these details, you have to be paying attention to the commercial or sales policies, because the crisis of the consumptions that perhaps will lead prices to fall And we cannot think that the PDO products or PGI products can decrease their prices, because you cannot have premium products at low prices. So the consortia will have to think about environmental and economic sustainability, perhaps even developing new marketing policies and sales and price policies. Like my colleague Cicchetti was saying, it would be nice to have a sort of a multitasking administrative body that could develop our skills, because the future will be increasingly hard, and when things get sour or hard, you need to be prepared for it. And so now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Manzi from the regional Enotech of Emilia-Romagna, or wine lab of Emilia-Romagna. So we many Italian companies heavily committed in developing our area, and they were the true stakeholders of territorial development. And that their work must also be measured in terms of environmental sustainability. And in fact, sustainability is is behind a project that so it's a pact among all the companies in order to reach the goal, which is certifying our area. So this is essential. Our region is quite sensitive to many agri-food issues, because that would also be a recognition of the hard work of many producers that in the last few years have been protecting the environment and also human health by applying sustainable agriculture, but also trying to save up water, but also cutting down the amount of pesticides. So this is something that we absolutely have to do. Even when it comes to enhance our areas, there are many effects. From a social point of view, the integration of much labor that comes in our territory in Italy, that is playing a major role, because the laborers became part of our communities. And from an economic point of view, yesterday we were also speaking about tourism and enogastronomic tourism. Just think about the effect of the wealth that can create, and that wealth is distributed in our communities. But also, what about environmental sustainability? I believe that the more we protect our areas, the more the area will pay back in terms of quality of life and well-being. So we want to deal with this topic, and we believe that this is essential for all of us, not just for a cultural fact, but because I think it is necessary, and it's important that sustainability shall be recognized, and it is also a great marketing tool for our areas. So thank you very much for being punctual. And now we will have Vittorio Emanuele Pisani from the Valpadana Provolone Cheese Protection Consortium. So good morning to everyone, and thank you for giving us this time to share views. The geographical indications are not just an expression of the territory, but they take into account the tradition, the specific features of a production, but also of a specific environment. If by sustainability we mean all the possibilities of protecting environmental resources, that is at the basis, actually, of geographical designations or indications. Sustainability is applied on many different fields, and the main perspective must be to give future generation a quality of life that is definitely not worse than the current one. So we need to make sure that there are very variables that contribute to the lifestyle in a dynamic manner, because the relations between the ecologic system and the anthropic or the man-made system can be affected by changing situations, and maybe perhaps by using different energy sources. The paradigm of sustainable development entails a system of assessment that includes the environment, the economy, and social issues for a thorough development. So the goal is to improve life of workers, of users and customers, and of local communities. It's important to have a sort of a common good, and with no discriminations about everyone's roles. So after having common guidelines in order to identify not conflicting needs, well, the consumers will be ready to pay a bit more for that geographical indications. So I believe that perhaps we should proceed by defining the interest groups in the local communities, also by promoting animals' welfare and well-being and users, but also we should be highlighting, health and food security, the juvenile labor, and other things like that. But also the parameters should be measured appropriately. So I believe that once we have identified these three main opinions, perhaps we'll find the right rules to implement them. So thank you to Emanuele Pisani. The next speaker is Andrea Righini from the PDO Tuscan Pecorino Sheep Cheese Protection Consortium. Good morning. I think that a geographical indication takes all these peculiarities from the geographical areas it is in. If all the territory has to offer are used badly, then you don't have much development. This is not the case of the PDO Tuscan sheep cheese, because let's say if the milk is not of good quality, then the finished product, the cheese, will not be as good as necessary, as having high quality as necessary. In addition to that, you need to have proper skills during the productions that have to be paid appropriately. But if these values are not expressed, the supply chain will not be well, and the final products will suffer consequences. This is a process we found out about 10 years ago. We started cooperating with the Sant'Anna School of the University of Pisa, first of all, to understand the production facilities, and then, reaching a sort of a sustainable productions. It would take quite a long time to describe what we did, but in the breeding companies, the greater yield actually followed the milk quality improvement. And so what do we want to do from now on? We're trying, thanks to the technical assistance measure that was activated by the Tuscan regional government, but also in cooperation with breeders and authorities. We need, work has to be organized in such a manner to cut down environmental impact, but also by improving hygiene measures, but also yield, perhaps by focusing the work in the springtime. The proposal that I would like to share with you, to all of those that are dealing with geographical indications is the following. Let's not expect as consortia to know everything about our products, to know the supply chain and its potential thoroughly. Let's invest in experimentations in order to improve the performance, the production performance, by eliminating those difficulties, because in order to make sure that a geographical indication product must take its characteristics, but a specific supply chain will make it easier for producers and consumers. Thank you. Thank you to Andrea Righini. And now the floor to Pier Maria Saccani from the Buffalo Milk Mozzarella from Campania. So I think that I am the 43rd speaker, and perhaps there are some concepts that should be discussed about sustainability. And since we need to speak about first of all, economic sustainability, because having singled out well the economic aspect of the management of consortia, we can deal with, we can actually deal with other topics such as animal welfare that are as important, but actually perhaps we are lagging behind about it. So economic sustainability, why? Because we are speaking about geographical indication as a sort of a common good, so that individual companies can understand that they have to invest on something that they don't own completely, but also that money has to be managed by a third party, a consortium. And that is the hardest part. That's the hardest part of the work we do. So we need to transfer to companies this element. These are not money that they're paying with the tax, but rather this is money that are being invested for promoting a sort of a common or shared good. And it is only when the communities believes it appropriate to invest on such a property of whatever kind it is, then you can have a concrete development of the whole sector. So economic sustainability is paramount. Without an appropriate economic basis, the activity of enhancement and development and protection cannot be done. And you cannot even expect that it's always that your work is always based on state contributions. Otherwise, you'll always be relying on a welfare state. So if a sector or a certain area is truly believing in the good quality of a specific production, maybe the different producers must act swiftly in order to develop it further. So it's not, I think that the main issue today is to have one single public interlocutors that can react as swiftly as companies do. Consortia are not as fast as the individual companies because the market is very fast. But I believe that we would need to have a sort of a public sector that could actually respond faster. In fact, we have the director of INAO, and that was established about 35 years ago in France. So, the different ministers that alternated in the Italian government tried to promote the the PGI system. And as I heard earlier, we ended up having many counterparts, according to the different topics, whereas I believe that we would need to have an appropriate interlocutors for this theme. And now, Mr. Michele Mannelli from the Nobile Wine from Montepulciano Consortium. I am representing a small consortium. We make about 10 million bottles, and in the last few years, we have been trying to qualify the production process, and so in a sort of a territorial marketing. But also in 2013, I also tried to promote the Forum for Sustainability, so that we tried to have the cooperation of the academia, but also of winemakers, to resolve a big dilemma, which was the lack of signs that could differentiate sustainability, but also the lack of wine governance that we thought was very important. If companies have certain expectations and consumers have different expectations, and there are no guidelines about what this concept of sustainability would be linked to wine, well, what happened is that companies were not investing on specific, areas, and consumers could not, make a sort of an informed choice. So this is a very important concept that is truly close to the world of wine and geographical indication. Wine made of 100% grapes grown in a specific area must be in line with the expectation of the customers, but also in line with the desires of the producers, and that has to be sustainable. In fact, we need to have a strong public action that will contribute to develop the production guidelines, but these must have a very high quality level, because out there you have the environmental levels. There is a lot of people that are familiar with carbon footprints, or I don't know, water sources, and so we must become knowledgeable in order to create the minimum level, and at the same time promotion has to be done by consortia. The success of our supply chain are quite evidently showing that were successful when they had a public-private partnership, and we actually managed to do so with wine after test and error, and so we had 15 models of certifications about 15 years ago, and now a consortium like the Nobile wine made a choice. In other words, it did not invent its sustainability model, and they tried to see what was already available on the market. We had Qualitas at the time. It was a sort of a collective brand based on third-party certification, and we started our project. So, of course, we have the need to have a strong public contribution, because the risk that this system that we selected, this model that we selected, and that is acknowledged by all international clusters, well, it has to be capable of being referential, but also capable in promoting it. So Federdoc, Stefanucci. So many things have been changing over the last few years. According to Federdoc, the geographical indications must provide an effective answers in terms of operations and dissemination. So communication is paramount, and that if you join forces, you'll be more successful. About 6 years ago, I was there too, when we started promoting the census, from which there were 15 main projects. It was a true Far West, because there were many other projects that did not qualify, and we understood that the approach had to be translated in a certifiable voluntary scheme, because we believe that also the other products, and there are some products that are more ahead of us, and more successful than us can truly certify everything, I mean, what they make. So we also wish for an intervention of the Ministry of Agricultural Affairs that should define the orientations and also define the boundaries and a guideline, so that also defining these private bodies that must comply with a very high level. And on the same time, it is desirable that promotion is done by private companies, those who are using the standards, who are more effective when it comes to market products and trade products. So good sustainability to everyone. This is a short video that I mean, this is the information that I had to share with you. So we have no more speakers. Now, before introducing the ministers, at the end of the first part of the session, I would like to remind the ministers that we have about 170 consortia, and they account for about 16 billion turnover of Italian agri-food production, which is also not just money, but also it's a great business card for Italy. And as to the reform of the common agricultural policies, hopefully their voices will be heard. So now we have Mr. De Maio, who is the Minister of Agricultural Policies.
Thank you for the invitation. Sorry about I've got a cold, so sorry if I'll speak with some difficulties. Shortly, my dear, I've listened to some of the intervention. I'm sorry I couldn't arrive before. I had other commitments, unfortunately, which could not be moved. I'm absolutely convinced that our country is in front of two possible directions. During many years, we talked, and we said how good we were, on how our country is beautiful, on how many tourists we have in our countries of agri-food excellence, so Italian products excellence, and in a certain way we were quite happy about. We were saying we knew that at the world level, the Italian agri-food products are the most copied in the world. So we knew that we could carry on quite easily. Nowadays, I'm convinced that the world is changing. It has changed. And we have competitors, important competitors, which, as far as the agri-food is concerned and tourism is concerned, are more and more in a fighting mood, and then markets are more and more demanding. A few weeks ago, I was in China, and what they recognized to Italy by the Chinese government, the word economic word, Chinese word, is that our products are products of quality, where we have a lot of controls, maybe too many according to our producers, but those controls actually allow us to have very high quality standard, higher than the others, and constantly being able to go around in the world on other markets and guarantee what we are requested for. So we are at a very important changing point, simply because nowadays on one side, we must ensure quality and so allow our producers to work in serene ways and maintain high quality standards. But on the other side, we must be more important for the promotion of our product all around the world. I This is a fixed idea I have. I'm working on this. I've been working on this. I still work on this because I'm working on this because the 42 billion euro of agri-food products we export all around the world, is some of us say, oh, it's a lot. No, in my opinion, it's not too much because, for example, Germany is exporting 60 billion euro exported by Germany. Let's talk about all the quality of our progress, or what we have said. Let's talk about professionalism of our producer, of our consortium, and of all those who are working in order to allow us to maintain high quality standards. Certainly, we have not less of them, nothing less than German or French colleagues or Spanish colleagues. But if we go to Spain or we go to China, for example, we are the fourth, sometimes the fifth exporter of wine in to China. And our market share is very small. If we go, for example, in North America, for some in some compartments, some sectors, we have a lot of large margin of growth. So our objective is to go and promote us in a different way. To promote us in which way? In a more structured and unified ways. I was talking about that on the phone with Undersecretary Geraci, because I believe that in this moment we cannot go around the world. The Chamber of Commerce, ENIT, MIBAFTA, all the different embassy, the consulate, the region, and certainly I forgot some association, some authority, and I'm sorry about that. And then the private, they decide, since they believe that all this public administration were quite inefficient, decide to go on their own. So the problem is that all those that have specified, have just indicated what they go and they speak different languages to our counterparts. So our American counterpart, or Australian or Chinese counterpart, or Canadian also counterpart, or Japanese. So we are talking about two different international agreements in which there is a long debate in our country. Just think about our counterparts, how they look at Italy. It's a sort of Brancaleone Armad, speaking different languages. When France is involved, there is only one counterpart. For Germany is the same thing. For Spain is the same thing. What's your opinion? They will listen to who? Italy or the other countries? This is the problem around the world. So our object is to go with a single voice. So we go to an exhibition or a fair, for example. A friend of mine sent me a picture of a very well-known wine exhibition in Germany, and you have the Italian pavilion, and there is no if you go to France and Spain, you don't recognize that you have Italy drag. If you go to Spain and France, you recognize the system, but Italy as a system is not recognized. So we must change our approach around the world. So our mission is to start working in a different way, and our mission is to have and start having counterparts with whom we can discuss, starting from consortia, since the role of consortia must be of protection, not only of protection, but also of promotion. So our objective in short term is to involve all the players who want to adhere to this project and work together around the world. I'm also convinced that the choice we made for the combination of agriculture and tourism is a winning choice. Last year, 85% of American citizens who decided to come in Italy, come to visit Italy, in Italy, Venice and Pompeii, but also for agri-food products in Italy. I go to visit Italy, to visit the landscape, the city of art, but also because I can eat and drink well. This is our mission. It is combine promotion of our country with products, and products combined with territories where they are produced or bred. And therefore, there will be a stronger contamination between promotion of wine and food products and the combination of our territory. This is our target, and we'll start with this change. We'll start with Vinitaly, Italy wine exhibition, where the stand will be different compared to the past, but we'll start doing this job for all the other events and promotion events that will be implemented around the world. Lastly, I would like to talk about one thing. I went on talking about a certain subject with organ commissar because the work that Paolo made and is doing also in Europe is an extremely important job. It's a sort of supply chain job, starting from local authority, then the region, and then the government, and reach Europe. The question that we actually discussed with organ commissar is that the Italian characteristic is that of having products which are linked to the territory and very high quality products. So we cannot go backward. So certainly we must streamline Italian agriculture and streamline our sector. We cannot think about launching within the ministry a mission of streamlining MIFPAT and at the same time accept an increase in bureaucracy with the CAP 2020. So on this side, I would like to discuss with you and trying to reflect after your intervention in order to have the next CAP will be streamlined and which will protect our country. In a critical moments, all sectors are reducing. The only sector which is growing, which saw an increase in export, the only sector which always had a positive sign is the agri-food sector. So the message I sent to the different ministers is to keep attention on Italian agriculture and attention of the tourist system, Italian tourist system. Thank you to Minister Centinaio. Now there will be a short lunch and 15 past 2 p.m. we'll restart our work.